My key point that I've just given you in my earlier answer is that we do not have that volume of vaccine in our hands. We cannot distribute that because it's not arrived with us yet. It may have been allocated to us, and that's very, very welcome.
Well, I'm joined now by the Scottish Conservative leader, Douglas Ross MP. First of all, what questions do you have over the vaccine rollout here?
Well, we still want to see the vaccine rollout increased as quickly as possible. This is a hope to get us through this pandemic and out the other side. And it's great that the UK government have been able to procure these 2 vaccines now, and hundreds of thousands of doses are available in Scotland. But, we've got to recognise the concerns that have been raised by the chair of the BMA's Scottish GP Committee and others about the availability of vaccinators, the burdens that they have to go through to become vaccinators, and just getting the supply out, particularly to GP practices.
John Swinney, though, is very clear that we are not in possession of the 700,000 allocated.
Well, he used very particular wording. Actually, the Scottish Government's own document for the vaccination programme states that they are responsible for getting the vaccines from the hubs up to Scotland. So they are responsible, once the vaccine has been manufactured, for delivering them up to Scotland and then getting them out to GP practices. So I think people do understand and do recognise that the vaccines are available, they've been allocated, but it's up to the Scottish Government to get them here and out to where we need them to get the vaccinating going at a rate that we need to get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible.
So you're crystal clear then that these 435,000 apparently missing vaccines are sitting in a distribution centre waiting on the Scottish Government to collect them?
Well, the Scottish Government's own document states they are responsible for getting them from these centres up to Scotland and then distributed. The UK Government is responsible with the manufacturers of producing the vaccine. They've allocated this sum that John Swinney has accepted, but to get this up to Scotland is up to the Scottish Government.
But when you say allocated, are they actually sitting there ready?
Well, I mean, there's different levels, as I think Jason Leach said on Good Morning Scotland yesterday. They go through a process to be validated, to check quality control and other things. But we do know there are hundreds of thousands of vaccines available to the Scottish Government, but that level have not got out into the field at the moment. We don't have them going into people's arms, and that's why we've got to increase all our efforts. I want both governments to work together. I think they largely have over this issue, but we do know that the rollout could be quicker, and we've just got to ensure that we increase the pace that we're doing this right across Scotland.
So just to be clear then, where exactly are they?
Well, I think that point has to be kept slightly under wraps just for security reasons. But
okay,
they
are they in Scotland or England?
Well, a large proportion are in Scotland. Others are in distribution centres ready for the Scottish Government to deliver them up to Scotland and to get them out to GP practices.
So there are hundreds of thousands of vaccines sitting in Scotland, ready to go?
Well, they're available to the Scottish Government, ready to go.
Right, so they're sitting there, could be collected any time.
Well, this is from the Scottish Government's own vaccine plan that they published. So it's the Scottish Government themselves that have said they are responsible for getting them up to Scotland and distributing them throughout Scotland. And it's the Scottish Government targets themselves that I'm looking at to make sure we meet in Scotland the targets set by the Scottish Government to get this roll out as quickly as possible. Because I've been receiving lots of concerns from people who haven't been invited for a vaccine yet, people who have offered their service as vaccinators. I've had local dentists saying to me they'd love to get involved, but the bureaucracy involved in terms of signing up to be a vaccinator is just too much. But I've also had, and I've got to say this, a lot of positive comments as well. So where people are being invited, they're getting a really good service and getting seen very quickly.
Okay, but I mean, a lot of over 70
is consistent across the country.
A lot of over 70s, though, are expressing concern that, the vaccine rollout to them has started in England but not Scotland. Are you clear that the vaccines that apparently have been allocated to the Scottish Government have actually been released by the authorities?
Yes, and we have seen a different approach in Scotland. The Scottish Government have gone into care homes to a greater extent than south of the border.
And was that the right thing to do?
Well, I was just going to say, in south of the border have vaccinated more over 80-year-olds. I think the figures from yesterday were 36% of over 80-year-olds in England have been vaccinated, but only 7% in Scotland. Conversely, a higher proportion of care home residents in Scotland have been vaccinated compared to the rest of the United Kingdom.
So which is the right approach?
Well, it's a balance, and what I'd like to see is all of the age groups vaccinated as quickly as possible, and that's
obviously.
why we've got to ramp up. That's why we've got to ramp up our efforts and ensure that we don't have GPs contacting the media and others saying they are ready to go, but they don't have a vaccine, and we don't have people who are willing and able to get involved in the process being turned away or being turned off from becoming vaccinators because of the bureaucracy involved in getting people trained up.
So is the vaccine rollout in Scotland slower than it needs to be because of the Scottish Government's approach?
Well, we've seen comparisons between all four nations of the United Kingdom, and Scotland trails behind not just England but also Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland, out of per head of population, have vaccinated a higher percentage than any other part of the country, followed by England, and then Scotland and Wales behind that. But, you know, I don't want to just be making comparisons and people saying this is a political point. I just want to ensure we ramp up the efforts to get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible.
Douglas Ross, thanks very much for speaking to us.